While my cousins celebrated their millions at my grandfather's funeral, I stood there holding a wrinkled envelope with a single plane ticket inside. That day, everyone laughed at me. 6 months later, the same people were begging for my forgiveness. My name is Nathan Whitmore, and this is the story of how the worst day of my life became the start of everything I didn't know I needed. But first, let me introduce the players in this elaborate game my grandfather designed from beyond the grave. There was Preston, my older cousin, dressed in a $5,000 Armani suit, already rehearsing his future CEO speech. His sister Mallory tried to hide her thrill behind oversized sunglasses, no doubt deciding which Instagram filter would best show off her soon-to-be yacht. Their parents, Vernon and Beatrice, hovered like vultures, eager for the lawyer's papers. And then there was me, the high school history teacher who drove 3 hours in a beat-up Honda Civic with failing brakes, just to say goodbye to the only person in this family who truly saw me. Grandfather Roland built an empire from nothing. One fishing boat became Whitmore Shipping Industries, and now everyone wanted their share of his kingdom. Everyone except me. I just wanted a little more time to play chess with the man who taught me that the most powerful moves are often the ones no one notices. That funeral wasn't only a farewell to Roland Whitmore. It was the day I realized that the smallest gift can hold the greatest secret, and that those laughing at you may be standing on ground ready to collapse. Every weekday, my alarm rang at 5:30 a.m., just as it had for 6 years. The ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment still had the same water stain shaped vaguely like Texas. My neighbor's dog barked on cue, and Mrs. Chen began her morning exercises next door, her movements echoing through the paper-thin walls. This was my life. Modest, predictable, and nothing like the privileged world I was born into. Being a Whitmore carried weight in certain circles: yacht clubs, private schools, and investment portfolios. But for me, it meant choosing between paying rent or fixing my car's transmission. I had walked away from all of it to teach students about the Revolutionary War and the Great Depression. My father, Dennis, was the only one who understood that choice. He died of a heart attack at his desk when I was 15, still working for his brother Vernon's division of the company. He was the responsible one, the steady one, the man who never complained when Vernon claimed his ideas. The last thing he told me was, "Nathan, don't let them turn you into something you're not. Your grandfather did that to me, and look where I am." 3 hours later, he was gone. My mother, Grace, carried us forward after that. She worked long shifts as a nurse at Detroit General, especially after learning Dad had signed away most of his shares to cover Vernon's bad investments. That was who Dad was. Always cleaning up someone else's mess. Always believing family meant sacrifice. Mom never spoke bitterly, but I saw her expression at Dad's funeral when she looked at Vernon. Some anger doesn't need words. Grandfather Roland was a mystery in a three-piece suit. He built Whitmore Shipping after World War II with nothing more than his Navy discharge pay and a single boat. By the time I was born, he owned fleets, warehouses, and wealth beyond measure. But he didn't believe in giving. He believed in earning. Every birthday card came with a $20 bill and the words, "Make it worth more." Every Christmas gift was practical. Business books, accounting courses, nothing frivolous. The only real connection we had was chess. It started when I was 10, after winning my school's tournament. He showed up with a board and said, "Show me what you've got." I lost in 12 moves, but he kept coming back every Sunday. Those games became our bond. "You play like your father," he told me once. "Too focused on protecting your pieces, not enough on winning." I replied, "Maybe I don't want to sacrifice everything just to win." He actually smiled. The first real smile I'd ever seen from him. "Maybe that's why you're the only one who interests me, Nathan." Preston and Mallory never understood. Preston shadowed Roland at the office, got his MBA at Wharton, and turned every dinner into a lecture on market strategy. Mallory turned herself into a brand, with 200,000 followers watching her flaunt designer outfits at European ports, calling it her platform. In truth, she was just spending grandfather's money while waiting for more. Vernon and Beatrice, their parents, played the part of a power couple. Vernon worked his way to CFO, though most of the real work came from his assistant. Beatrice attended galas not for charity, but for the photo spreads. They lived in a house so large, it needed an intercom just to talk across it. And then there was me, teaching 43 teenagers about the Constitution, grading papers at a second-hand table, and feeling more fulfilled than they could ever understand. That was my life before the funeral, before the envelope, before everything changed. I thought I knew who I was. I was wrong. The Rochester Country Club had never felt more suffocating than on that October afternoon. Roland insisted his will be read in the same oak-paneled room where he had struck his biggest deals. The polished mahogany table reflected our anxious faces. Preston kept adjusting his Rolex every few minutes, while Beatrice complained endlessly about the muddy cemetery. "Before we begin," said Mr. Harwick, the family attorney, adjusting his glasses, "I want you all to know that Roland was very precise about these arrangements. He reviewed this will 1 week before his passing." Vernon leaned forward, fists tight, with anticipation. "We understand, Harwick. Roland discussed the succession plan with me extensively." A lie. Everyone knew Roland never shared business matters outside the office. Still, Vernon had been bragging for months that he would take over as CEO with Preston at his side. "Let's proceed," Hatterwick said, opening the leather-bound folder. "To my eldest son Vernon Whitmore, and his wife Beatrice, I leave the estate in the Hamptons and the investment account ending in 471. Beatrice clutched Vernon's arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "To my grandson Preston Whitmore, I leave Whitmore Shipping Industries and all operational assets, with the condition that current employment levels be maintained for at least 1 year. Preston jumped to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. "I knew it, grandfather. I won't let you down." His phone was already in his hand, likely ready to update his LinkedIn to CEO. "To my granddaughter Mallory Whitmore, I leave the Manhattan penthouse on Central Park West and the yacht Serenity, currently docked in Newport." Mallory squealed, her voice sharp enough to pierce glass. "The penthouse? And the yacht? My followers are going to lose it." Finally, Harwick turned to me. There was pity in his eyes. "And to my grandson Nathan Whitmore, I leave this." He handed me a small worn envelope with my name written in Grandfather Sepp's shaky handwriting. The room went silent for 2 seconds before Preston burst out laughing. "Are you serious? That's Sepp's it? An envelope?" I held it carefully, though my heart raced. Inside was a single plane ticket. Rome. One way, departing in 48 hours. Preston snatched it from my hand. "A coach ticket. This is rich. The teacher gets a vacation." Mallory filmed the moment, grinning. "This is hilarious. Nathan, your face right now. Don set worry. Maybe he left you frequent flyer miles too." Vernon stood tall, adjusting his tie like a man who believed he had won. "Roland always said you lacked the instinct for business, Nathan. At least he left you something nice." "Rome is beautiful this time of year," Beatrice said, her tone laced with false sympathy. "A little trip to help you cope." How thoughtful. From the corner, my mother finally spoke. "Is that everything, Mr. Harwick?" "That concludes the distribution of assets," the attorney replied, closing the folder. "There is, however, a personal letter for Nathan, to be opened only after he arrives in Rome." "A letter," Preston laughed. "What Sepp's he going to write? 'Sorry you zipper broke. Enjoy the pizza.'" "Preston, enough," Vernon interrupted. Though he was smiling, Nathan made his choice. He wanted to be a teacher, and Roland respected that enough to give him a farewell gift. We should all appreciate what we received. I looked again at the ticket. October 15th, 3 p.m. Alitalia Flight 61. The timing was oddly precise. Why Rome? Grandfather had spoken often of Shanghai, London, Hamburg, never Rome. Well, I said, sliding the ticket back into its envelope, I guess I set better pack. You actually going? Mallory asked, shocked. You are going to use your sick days for a random trip to Rome? My grandfather gave me a ticket, I replied, meeting each of their eyes. The least I can do is use it. Vernon shook his head. Sentimental. Just like your father, Dennis never understood that emotion has no place in business either. That was the moment I knew I would get on that plane, because Vernon was wrong about my father, wrong about me, and maybe wrong about what grandfather had truly left behind. The ticket was light in my pocket, but it felt heavier than all the millions they'd inherited. As I left the country club, their laughter followed me to the parking lot. I remembered Grandfather Sip's final words to me. During our last chess game, the best moves, Nathan, are the ones your opponent never sees coming. The rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time that day. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the ticket while my laptop showed my bank balance. $1,847.23. Rent was due in 5 days. My car needed new brakes. I had 43 Civil War essays to grade. Every logical part of me said flying to Rome was irresponsible. But I kept remembering my grandfather's face during our last chess match, just 2 weeks before he died. He'd been different that day, softer, as if he had stopped playing a role he'd carried for decades. Nathan, he said, moving his knight in a pattern I didn't recognize, what do you know about trust? It's earned, not given, I answered, the same phrase he had drilled into us since childhood. No, boy, real trust is knowing when to follow without fully understanding why. Your father knew that. He trusted me with something once, something important, and I failed him. But you, Nathan, you sip different. You don't want anything from me. I never have, grandfather. I know. That's why. When the time comes, you still trust me, even when others think you stir a fool. Now, holding that ticket, his words felt less like memory and more like instruction. I picked up the phone and called my mother. I'm going, I said, as soon as she answered. I knew you would, Grace replied calmly. Your grandfather called me last month. He didn't say much, only that I should support whatever decision you made after the funeral. Mom, this is crazy. I can afford to miss work. I have responsibilities. Nathan, your father once told me Roland wasn't always the man we knew. He said there was a before and an after in his life. Maybe this is about the before. The next morning, I arranged a substitute at Lincoln High. My principal, Dr. Washington, wasn't pleased, but I hadn't missed a single day in 6 years. She allowed me 3 days off. 3 days to fly to Rome and figure out what game my grandfather was playing. Mr. Whitmore, are you okay? Asked Jasmine, one of my best students, after my last class. Just thinking about history, Jasmine, how sometimes the most important moments look ordinary while they are happening. I packed light, 1 carry-on with 2 changes of clothes, and my father's leather journal, which I had kept since his funeral. The Uber to Detroit Metro cost $32 I couldn't spare, but I was committed. At the gate, I opened the envelope again, and noticed something I had missed in the corner. Faintly written in pencil was 1947. The year grandfather was 22, the year after he left the Navy. When my group was called, I joined the line behind a family arguing over seating. Ordinary people with ordinary problems. None of them wondering why a dead man had sent them across the Atlantic. I found my seat. 32B, middle row in the back. Of course Preston had been right. It was Coach. The man beside me was already snoring. The woman on my other side hogged both armrests, watching a movie without headphones. As the plane climbed, Detroit shrinking below, I thought about Preston sitting in grandfather's office, Mallory on the yacht, Vernon and Beatrice, already with financial advisors. And here I was, cramped in economy, chasing a mystery I couldn't afford. Yet, somehow it felt right. For the first time since the funeral, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The flight attendant stopped by. "Sir, something to drink?" "Just water, thanks." As I twisted open the bottle, another chess lesson came back. Once, grandfather had sacrificed his queen to win. I had been stunned. Why give up the most powerful piece? "Power isn't set what you hold, Nathan," he said. "It sets what you are willing to give up for something greater." Most people can see past the loss. That sets why they never win. The plane banked east toward Rome. My cousins thought they'd claimed everything that mattered. But as I settled in for the 8-hour flight, I felt certain that grandfather's true game was only beginning, and I was the only piece he had placed to play it. At cruising altitude, I closed my eyes, my father's journal pressed to my chest, trusting a dead man's plan without knowing the board. We landed at Rome's Fiumicino Airport at 3:07 p.m. local time. My legs were stiff, my back sore, and I hadn't slept. The mix of Italian and English announcements made it real. I was in Rome with no reservation, no plan, and no idea what to do next. Immigration was a blur. Purpose of visit, the officer asked in accented English. "I honestly don't know," I answered. He gave me a strange look, then stamped my passport. "Welcome to Italy." I followed the crowd through arrivals. Families reunited, drivers held business signs, tourists looked lost. I was about to leave when I saw it. A printed sign with my name, Nathan Whitmore, held by a man in a black suit. Heart racing, I approached. "I stamp Nathan Whitmore." Relief spread across his face. "Mr. Whitmore, finally, please, come quickly." His English was accented but clear. "Who sent you?" "Your grandfather arranged everything months ago. My name is Lorenzo. Please, we have a long drive." He took my bag before I could respond, and led me to a black Mercedes that probably cost more than 2 years of my salary. The October air was warm, nothing like Detroit's chill. Lorenzo opened the rear door, and I sank into leather seats softer than clouds. "Where are we going?" I asked as he pulled away. "Monterey Estate, 1 hour north, in the Sabine Hills." "I don't understand. My grandfather never mentioned an estate in Italy." Lorenzo met my eyes in the mirror. "Mr. Rowland owned it for 45 years. He visited every September, 1 week, always alone. 45 years, since 1980, none of us had known." The road narrowed as we left the city, winding through hills of olive groves and vineyards, scenery too perfect to be real. "How did you know my grandfather?" I asked. "My father was his driver first. When he died, I took over. 20 years now." So Roland had been visiting Italy every year, in secret. What else had he hidden? We passed through a small village where men sat outside a cafe, watching us go by. Soon Lorenzo turned onto a private road lined with cypress trees. At the end, massive gates opened automatically, revealing a villa that stole my breath. 3 stories of golden stone, terraces overlooking vineyards, gardens like something from a Renaissance painting. Lorenzo parked before enormous wooden doors, centuries old. Before I could react, they opened. An elderly woman stood there, elegant in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with presence. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes the same steel gray as my grandfather's. She walked toward me slowly, tears streaming down her face, and before Lorenzo even spoke, I already sensed the truth. "Nathan," he said quietly, "meet your grandmother, Sophia Whitmore." The world tilted. I reached for the car just to steady myself. That sip's impossible. My grandmother died before I was born. Sophia took my hands, her grip surprisingly firm. Your American grandmother, Carol, did pass away. But I am very much alive. Her accent was soft, her English perfect though formal. She studied my face as though committing it to memory. You have his eyes, she whispered, but your father's gentle spirit. Come inside, Nathan. There is much to tell. The villa's interior reflected quiet elegance, not the gaudy excess of Vernon and Beatrice's mansion. Sophia led me into a sitting room lined with photographs. There was my grandfather, young and smiling, standing before a small church. A wedding photo, Roland and Sophia in their 20s, radiant. We married in 1947, Sophia explained. Roland had stayed in Italy after the war to help rebuild. They met at a dance in Rome. He was so full of dreams. We started with nothing, just a few acres of vines. A friend sold him for almost nothing. She poured 2 glasses of wine. This is from our vineyard. We call it eredità, meaning inheritance. The wine was extraordinary, full of depth. I don't understand, I said. Your grandfather built a whole life here, she continued. More than a life. A family. Me, our son Augusto, and grandchildren. He never met because he chose America instead. He left you. Her voice carried sadness, not anger. Roland had gone to fight in Korea, intending to be away only 6 months. But on leave, he met my American grandmother, who became pregnant with Vernon. An honorable man would have divorced me, but Roland couldn't give up either life. So he lived both, separately, in secret. My hands shook. He lived a lie. No, Nathan, he lived 2 truths. He loved us both differently. The vineyard grew, became prosperous. He sent money, came every September, but he could never decide until now. She opened a desk drawer, pulling out a thick folder. Whitmore Vineyards International. 47 million in assets. It's yours, Nathan. He was very clear. No one else. The documents, deeds, contracts, bank statements were overwhelming. Proof of a parallel empire. But then Sophia played a video recorded just a month before his death. Grandfather's face appeared, calm for the first time I could remember. Nathan, if you're watching this, you trusted me enough to take the flight. Good. You always understood that some things matter more than money. Your cousins received what they wanted. The illusion of wealth, but illusions fade. Whitmore Shipping has been losing money for years. Preston is inheriting a disaster. The penthouse, the yacht, the estate. They're all debt. I gave them hollow trophies because that's what they valued. He leaned closer. You, Nathan, never asked me for anything. You chose teaching because you wanted purpose, not status. So I'm giving you what you never requested. Truth, family, and real wealth. The vineyard produces 2 million bottles annually. The villa has been in Sophia's family for 3 centuries. Augusto runs operations. Your cousins Marco and Elena are good people, raised with values. This is your true inheritance. A family that values work, land that yields something real, and a legacy built on honesty. His eyes sharpened again. One more thing. Preston will call within a month, asking for help. Be kinder than he was to you. That's what makes you better. Checkmate, my boy. The screen went dark. Sophia touched my shoulder. He spoke of you constantly, always proud of the grandson who chose meaning over money. I stayed in Italy 3 weeks, learning everything. Uncle Augusto resembled my father so strongly it hurt. He managed the vineyard with quiet dignity, never bitter about being hidden. Marco and Elena welcomed me warmly, teaching me about the land and about the version of my grandfather they knew. He was lighter here, Elena said, hands in the soil, laughing. Not the businessman you knew. Exactly 23 days later, Preston called. I was back teaching when my phone rang at midnight. Nathan, it sits Preston. We need to talk. His arrogance was gone. The company sets bankrupt. The accountants uncovered everything. Dad lost the house. Mallory Set's penthouse was foreclosed. Its sets all gone. I said, "Mem, sorry, Preston," I said. "No, you sit not. And you shouldn't sit be. We were terrible to you. Grandfather left you something real, didn't sit he?" "Yes." "Good. You deserved it. You actually loved him." The next day I offered Preston a role managing U.S. distribution for Dow wines, salary only. He accepted immediately. Mallory took longer, but she came around too. She turned out to be skilled in marketing when promoting something genuine. She later married Lorenzo's son and now lives in Rome, learning the trade. Vernon and Beatrice downsized to a small apartment in New Jersey, working modest jobs. They don't speak to me, but Preston says they're happier, finally depending on each other instead of money. My mother moved into the guest house of the California property I purchased with my first payment. She retired from nursing and now paints daily, something she always dreamed of. As for me, I still teach part-time. Summers I spend in Italy, running the vineyard and embracing the family I never knew. My students laugh that their history teacher owns a winery, but I use it to explain trade, agriculture, and legacy. One evening, playing chess with Uncle Augusto, he said, "Your grandfather always said the winner isn't set the one who takes the most pieces, but the one who knows which pieces matter." I looked at the board, then out at the vineyard, then at a photo of my grandfather, young in 1947, hopeful. "He won," I said. "It just took 60 years for the game to finish." "No, Nathan." Augusto smiled. "You won. You just didn't know you were playing." That ticket envelope, the one they mocked, wasn't just a trip. It was an invitation to discover who I was, where I came from, and what truly mattered. My grandfather gave my cousins what they thought they wanted, and gave me what I didn't know I needed. The last bottle he produced still sits in my Detroit apartment, unopened. Its label reads Eredita 2024. Underneath, in his handwriting, "For Nathan, who understood that the best inheritance isn't what you're given, but what you're trusted to continue." Every Sunday I still play chess, sometimes with Augusto in Italy, sometimes with my students, sometimes alone, thinking about the man who orchestrated the longest game of his life. He showed me that wealth isn't measured in dollars but in truth, family, and the courage to trust when nothing makes sense. The board my cousins focused on was only a distraction. The real game was played on another board, in another country, in another language, and my grandfather made sure I was the only one invited to play. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even the smallest gifts can hold the biggest surprises. Comment below with a time when something small changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family, secrets, and the unexpected lessons life reveals.